So I'm Mike Van Meter. For those that were on, I think I might see one or two familiar faces from last week. So welcome back. And for those that didn't join us last week, Hutch, welcome to everybody. The goal of this is really to give you guys a little bit of some of the highlights. Last week we had 6 different areas highlighted. This week we're covering 6 other areas. And the idea is sort of a bit of a rapid fire between a faculty and or a resident to sort of tell you a little bit about their experience with that area. And then we move on to the next. And during that time, if you don't mind, in the chat, jotting down any questions you have. We'll try to answer those kind of real time. And if whatever we don't get to, I'm going to ask the chiefs that we have on the call. I think I see Donna and Hutch is going to present first for EMS. We'll just have them kind of circle back and curate that back to the people on the call. And what we'll try to do there is just efficiently answer your questions. The idea here is, I think something that maybe the elephant in the room is you guys are on these calls looking at different various programs and trying to get a sense of who we are, who they are. And my sense is that we probably all look very similar online and during these presentations. And so that's a challenge. And I think that's up to us to answer everything as candidly as we can, and for you guys to ask anything that's on your mind. And so we encourage you to do that either in the chat, or we have a Q&A built into the end of this. We'll try to end around 8 o'clock, but I'm free all night. So I will be happy to stick on the call for a while and answer any questions you guys have. I see we have one of our coordinators, the residency coordinator, Mona Davis, is on. I'll let her introduce herself really quickly, and then we'll get into our education group. But Mona, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for coming. I'm Mona Davis. I'm the residency coordinator. So happy to see all of these wonderful faces. I look forward to meeting you guys, and if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Mona. And then there is a way on WebEx to view so that you have the person speaking kind of front and center. If you want to set that up, it's at the top right-hand corner of your screen. But without further ado, I'll just get into Dr. Cooper and Dr. Dukoch.
Yeah, and also we have Dr. Giordano here. So I am
Dr. Giordano.
Cooper.
My apologies.
I'm the Associate Program Director, and I'll let John introduce himself also now.
Perfect time. Yeah, I'm John Giordano. I serve as the Director of Undergraduate Medical Education for the department. So I liaise between our department and all of our medical student activities. And I also work with our MS1 and MS2 classes running their doctoring course.
And together we are the co-fellowship directors of our inaugural fellow, Dr. Gregory Dukoch, who's one of the medical education fellow. I'm also known as the homeless guy in the red shirt. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dukoch and let him tell you a little bit about our medical education fellowship.
Hey guys, how are you? I'm Greg Dukoch. Currently I'm hiding in a supply closet at LBJ. I planned on going in the break room, but all the nurses were handing off and it was quite loud. So we'll see if somebody comes in here and starts yelling at me. Anyway, so fellowship in education, like Dr. Cooper said, this is the inaugural year. It's been great so far. Awesome experience. Honestly, between clinical and non-clinical work, if you want like the broadest experience possible, this is really a great place to come. Really, you get to work with MPs, PAs, you get to work with obviously residents. Frequently, we have the students rotating through. And then really what I wanted to talk a little bit about was the mix of the hospital settings. So we've got this awesome, unique mix of a major tertiary referral center being at Herman, where you see like the whole spectrum of acuity and pathology. And then we've got LBJ, which is this really busy county hospital with, again, really high acuity patients, but kind of that bread and butter community medicine. And you see people that have really advanced stages of disease for typical things that you don't really see other places. So I think that's awesome. As far as the specifics to education goes, so that's clinically, and we're constantly working with residents who they're great, they're amazing. I was a resident here originally. Honestly, if anything, it was my experience here that pushed me into wanting to go into academics and education, just because we have such a great residency program, and honestly, it just was a lot of fun, and I wanted to keep the good times rolling. So the other thing that's really great is the kind of colleague mix. I learned from people, whether you're talking about EKGs with Dr. Cooper, EMS stuff with Dr. Schultz, and just kind of the whole spectrum of everything. There's just some really in-depth experts. And I would obviously be remiss if I didn't talk about Dr. Gordon in ultrasound. That guy's amazing. So non-clinically, a lot of great opportunities here for teaching and scholarly roles. There's plenty of opportunity for research. Dr. Wang, who heads our research division, he's awesome. He'll get you into whatever research you want. I have an IRB pending right now. I'm working with Dr. Fadile. One little niche that we sort of have carved out is that we've got some really great, sort of digital medical curriculum stuff people. Dr. Fadile, Dr. Ostermeyer, he's one of the founding members of WikiM. So he's really great if you want to get involved in more electronic education experiences. Some of the other kind of traditional roles, you can help head up Journal Club, which is one of my roles this year. And then you serve on a variety of committees, whether it's the conference planning committee, the clinical competency committee, and then also serving as an advisor. So there's really a lot of broad opportunities. We have SIM as well. Just a lot of broad opportunities for education. I think probably this was a long time coming, and I'm glad that I got to be the person to kick it off. As far as educational opportunities, additionally, we have it broken down right now into 1 or 2 years. If you do the 2 years, then it's sort of the expectation or opportunity that you have is to do a master's in medical education. What's great about that is it's all online through University of Houston. So if you enroll in it, and whatever, there's a delay, you can just take it with you. It's essentially portable and you can finish it out. And I think there's an increasing demand now for educators, specifically in, medical education. And often the need for a master's is sort of becoming increasingly desirable for employment. So one other thing would be the ASEP Teaching Fellowship. Normally you do that towards the beginning of your fellowship. This year there was a delay in it because of COVID, unfortunately, but it's still happening, and it will happen in subsequent years. And that's just an awesome opportunity for learning techniques specific to emergency medicine teaching, and it really serves as very complementary to the master's program. Cooper, I don't know how much you want me to go into sort of the compensation stuff, the ACGME stuff.
No, that's great. Why don't you tell them it's a non-ACGME fellowship, which for those of you that don't know what that means, that essentially means you don't have to be classified as a PGY whatever, and you also don't have to get paid as a PGY whatever. So the compensation is much more competitive than if it were an ACGME fellowship. So that's practically what that means to you. But why don't you tell them a little bit about how much you work clinically, what the expectations are?
Sure. So currently we are scheduled for 8 shifts a month, which is about half time compared to full-time faculty. Now that is totally doable. That gives you plenty of time for you to complete your fellowship activities. The benefit, though, is that there are plenty of internal moonlighting opportunities. I think right now even I'm on a moonlighting shift. So if you need to supplement your income, I mean, we all have been there. We got bills, we got loans. I wouldn't have that dissuade you in the least if you really are interested in doing academics, because you can totally make up for it on the back end with moonlighting. And it's weird not to be living on a resident salary now, to tell you the truth. Like savings, I didn't even think I had a savings account, and it's pretty cool. There's plenty of opportunity, and they really take care of you guys. And then as far as just sort of life experiences, like in July I had a baby, and they're just awesome here. Like they really do a good job of supporting you. There's no additional pressure to take shifts if you have other things going on. Your fellowship is definitely priority number one, which is I think a really important thing to ask.
Thank you, Greg. I want to make sure we leave time for everyone else, but I'll briefly say that kind of the point of the fellowship is that if you really want to make a career out of education, and that's what you know you want to do. You have a passion for that. This is a fast track for you. This will consolidate what took me probably 3 or 4 years into 1 or 2, and it will really jumpstart your career and get you hopefully your dream job, exactly what you want to be doing, whether it be graduate or undergraduate medical education. And so I'll stop it there. And thanks, Dr. Van Meter, for giving us the time.
No, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
And Donna Hassani, thanks, Greg. Thanks, Coop. Thanks, John. Donna Hassani just put a comment into the chat. There's a ton of other opportunities for teaching while you're a resident, for learning how to teach while you're a resident, for scholarly activity in medical education while you're a resident. We can get into that during the Q&A if you're interested. We have Dr. Walea, who's one of our faculty, on the call, and she is actually working clinically too. This has been a night of clinical work. So we're going to see if we can get her to chime in with community engagement. I'm so sorry, Dr. Ferguson, if that's okay, just because she's on shift. So we're going to get her in, get her to say a few words about that. And I don't know if Dr. Mbugwa is on the call as well.
Yeah.
I didn't see her. Awesome. Okay, wonderful. So I don't know, Shabana, are you there?
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, my video is not working. My battery is super low and I'm in shift. So I'm speaking through my N95, but I did want to tell you guys a bit about community engagement. So Dr. Takanaka, who's working nights, and then myself, we're faculty advisors for the Vice Chief of Community Engagement. And Dr. Mbugwa, who's one of our amazing second years, she is one of our current Vice Chiefs. So she can tell you a little bit more about what they are doing exactly. But basically, we pick, 2 resident leaders, 1 or 2 who have a strong passion outside of medicine, who want to establish and really just connect with the broader community around us. So creating activities and exchanging knowledge and skills with people and groups outside of our institution. So the past vice chiefs did a great job collaborating with community outreach programs in different schools, communities, and the development of projects. So it's a great way to get involved, a great way to get your other residents involved, and even involve the faculty with some fun projects to provide community support.
Thank you, Dr. Wally.
Yeah, of course.
So as Dr. Wally said, there's 2 of us. It's myself and Dr. Goldstein, who unfortunately is also working tonight. We are the Vice Chiefs of Community Engagement. So we had the opportunity to see kind of what the last year's Vice Chiefs did, which was amazing. We have a couple of traditions which they have been doing, including, so last year we did this thing called Hunger Games, which was actually a challenge collaboration between our residency and the Baylor residency, which so happens to be next door, where we'd actually volunteer in person at one of the Houston food banks, and we'd kind of tally up points based on how many people show up from each of our family members within our residency. Unfortunately, because of COVID, a lot of the things which we had planned for this year we're not able to do because of the in-person requirement. So we're kind of trying to be creative in going around that. Something else that's very special to our residency is we do talk about, so each Christmas or holiday, we participate in Angel Tree, in which each of our families, and if nobody's talked about families before, briefly, our residency is divided into a couple of groups with some 2 or 3 or 4 attendings, and then residents from each year. And so we just welcomed our newest interns into our families, and it's a place to meet, to kind of get structured or unstructured advising, just to hang out. Our family loves wine and cheese night, and so we love that. And so we usually have competitions surrounding the family structure, and so the Angel angel tree is one of those where each family is assigned an angel, and you participate with your family, collaborate what gifts you want to buy, kind of makes it a little special. You can go to Target runs with your faculty, advisors. It's very fun. And so that's something that we'll be carrying on this year as well. In place of our in-person volunteering, we are having sort of a competition together with some of the other vice chiefs, where each family is donating food to the Houston Food Bank, and it counts as points. So we kind of tally those up. So we're trying to go around the whole, pandemic, kind of forcing us to find other ways. So that's some ways that we're volunteering. We also have some of ways of reaching our community. My other co-resident is very passionate about education, and so she actually just got one of our some of our representatives from our different social groups, including our social workers, people from behavioral health institutions in which we send tons and tons of patients, so kind of reaching them, and they had an opportunity to speak to us at one of our conferences, and we're just trying to work with them to develop more streamlined processes on how to help our patients, working on, QA projects and how to give information to residents so that we can help our homeless populations, our psych population. And so we do a little bit of that. So we have our volunteering section, but also kind of getting in touch with our community needs and sort of identifying how we can help residents be involved in that. If anybody has any questions, feel free. I don't know if we're giving out emails at the end, but feel free to email and ask away. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Shabana. I think Shabana had a stat lab value called in, so she's out. But if you please feel free to jot down questions, like I said, in the chat, or just save them. Just remember them for the Q&A at the end. I think one of the things that COVID is definitely pumped the brakes on a little bit is we've been talking about for about a year now, the opportunity to maybe get involved on a longitudinal basis with a school in Houston for sort of big brother, big sister mentorship, that sort of thing. But yeah, we definitely, and I think, I forget if Dr. Wale mentioned that we're trying to do at least sort of the quarterly activities, whether it's, community engagement with regard to the Houston Food Bank and other initiatives that have already been mentioned. But the goal is to do quarterly one-offs like that, but also to develop a longitudinal experience with our community. So with that said, I think I have no more interruptions for you, Dr. Ferguson, and I think Dr. Stogenbauer. You guys are up.
All right, yay. Hi, everyone. My name is Brandy Ferguson. I'm one of the attendings here, and I'm also part of our EMS section here at UT. I'm also going to call out a shout out to Dr. Schultz, I see him on my screen. He is one of the associate professors here, as well as the assistant medical director of EMS. He runs our EMS fellowship as well, and he knows all things EMS. He is EMS, so I'm going to call him out. I also specialize in disaster medicine, and I'm medical director for Memorial Hermann Health System for disaster management. So I get to, I basically do hospital emergency management type things for the hospital. So right now we've been in a command center for COVID-19, planning for all of our acute care sites, our freestanding EDs, our rehab facilities for the past, 6 months, 7 months? It feels like about 10 years. So if you love pre-hospital medicine, if you love disaster medicine, then you're my best friend. You can come work with me. We do have a new vice chief of disaster medicine that we're doing this year. So Dr. Whitney Chandler is our new, brand new person. She works with me at our command center. We go over the fundamentals of emergency management. She has a project where she's going to run her own tabletop and full-scale exercise throughout the year. And she'll get to do fun things with me, as well as sit in meetings and talk about flooding and mass casualty incidents. So if you're interested in pre-hospital medicine, especially disaster, There is a lot to do down here. And I'll let Dr. Schultz talk about EMS. I won't talk too much about it because he knows a lot more than me for the Houston area. So I'm going to call you out, Dr. Schultz. I apologize.
Well, I'm gonna kick it to Dr. Stilgenbauer first because he's got a lot of experience with it as well. I'm gonna let him go, and I'll plug in gaps at the end. All right.
Hey, well, I'll tell you what. Just first off, to start, everybody that's listening, I think the neatest thing is just realize every person that just talked to you is so humble about their role, but just understand these people are like tip of the spear in what they do. Dr. Ferguson, Dr. Schultz, we have Dr. Osborne. We have a very long list. Those are people that are in the field. We also have a huge EMS research component, Dr. Ostermeyer, Hubinger, Wang. The list goes on, and these people are literally top of the tier. That's part of what initially drew me to the program in the first place. I love EMS. My background is as a paramedic. So when I first got here, immediately I got excited after finding out, intern year, you are already thrown in the mix. You have 4 intern year rideouts with Houston Fire Department, which is the 4th largest fire-based system in the country, if I'm not mistaken, already getting your feet wet intern year. And then as it's already been brought up, and definitely worth repeating, our vice chief roles really plug you into what you have an interest in. And I hope that you guys are paying attention. Every single time we bring up an area of specialization, if you want to call it, we have a vice chief position or two that provide an opportunity for people to be involved big time in that second role, in that second year. So as a second year last year, I was able to really get my feet wet, spend more time with Dr. Schultz, more time with Dr. Osborne, and carry on some really important conversations that actually influenced me to continue on my own education. Just as Dr. Dukoch mentioned earlier, I didn't initially have a huge interest in academics, but I just submitted my application for fellowship for EMS here. It's such an incredible opportunity being with these educators. I think that's a big part of it. I would love to point out the opportunities. Again, other than those 4 shifts, you have extrication day where you're putting on bunker gear, tearing into cars, busting out windows, and all kinds of fun stuff. So if you have any interest in anything pre-hospital, understand these people are being very humble. We have flight, we have disaster, we have EMS, we have all kinds of stuff. So Dr. Schultz, still in the many gaps. I'm sure I left, but I could keep talking forever.
No, I mean, you hit a lot of it, and a lot of it, Donna and Dr. Fairbrother, some other people put up in the chat as well, right? I mean, intern year, you do extrication day, you do several rideouts that everybody does because you got to understand the pre-hospital environment if you're going to get involved in hospital EM, and then there's upper level electives available. Now that Dr. Ferguson's kind of settled into her role and the vice chief role there on the disaster side is built up, there's opportunities on the disaster side looking at in-hospital disaster, out-of-hospital disaster education. Dr. Osborne's been mentioned. She's only the 3rd ever medical director for Memorial Hermann Life Flight in its 40-plus year history, and recently got some big shout-outs in the Houston Women's Business Journal in terms of Women Who Mean Business Award. I mean, our EMS crew is our EMS section from in the last several years has grown exponentially, and the opportunities are very large. And there's also, if you are interested in more of a community or kind of not big city fire EMS role, we have 9 EMS agencies that UT medical directors provide medical direction for that you can get involved with in place of maybe some of the HFD experiences if you wanted to get into a more suburban area, if that's something that's interesting to you. So lots of opportunities, lots of chance. And then we've also got Dr. Cooper and the chiefs have worked with the EMS to incorporate ongoing didactics throughout the year, everything from how to be a medical director and take medical direction calls to disaster planning to all those kind of things. So it's part of your curriculum from the ground up. EMS has always kind of been siloed outside of emergency medicine, and this program is very different in that regard. We really are embraced and part of the group.
I want to add one quick thing, because this, I remember as an applicant hearing this, and it never really sunk in. And I'm a 3rd year and a chief, and I will tell you, it's just now starting to sink in. Our helipad is the busiest helipad for trauma in the United States of America. that in itself is an incredible aspect of our program.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much. And obviously there's, I think for each and every section we're highlighting tonight. And if you look back on our website, you see, we also talked about a number of other highlights last week. All of that's fair game for this week too. If you missed that, or if you have a question that you didn't get answered, please ask. So what we'll do next is I think we'll jump into ultrasound, if that's okay. We have Dr. Miller and Dr. DK.
Hey, everyone.
Guys. I am Sarah Miller. I'm the ultrasound division director at McGovern Medical Emergency Medicine Program. And I'm going to let you know that Chigozie DK is actually not a vice chief of ultrasound, though she could have been if she wanted to. She is actually the vice chief of QA, but I'm going to also let her tell you how all of this relates so well together. But I'm going to let her give you some of the information about our ultrasound program and what it will mean for you.
Yes. My name's Chigozie. I'm one of the third years and one of the QA, the quality assurance vice chiefs. So as we all know, ultrasound is becoming more and more fundamental in the worlds of emergency medicine and is being used more and more in clinical practice. And so I'm just going to highlight some of the features of our program. So we have 6 ultrasound faculty, 2 ultrasound fellows, and this year 2 ultrasound vice chiefs. At both of our sites at Herman and LBJ, we have 14 machines that can be found all around the department. At Herman, we do about 6,000 like records, documentations of ultrasounds a year, as well as at LBJ, it's about 8,000 or so. So it kind of just shows how often and how regular we use it on shift and get pretty comfortable at using it as well. For the QA standpoint, our quality assurance is a really unique opportunity where we get to send in cases that on shifts that are interesting and how we could just improve as a department. And so one thing that comes up is just the use of ultrasound in any cases where differentials maybe aren't as clear. You could always use an ultrasound, and that's been something that's becoming more and more beneficial, and we promote our documentation and are just using it on every shift. And so it's a great opportunity.
So our ultrasound curriculum starts basically your orientation month. You spend 2 or 3 days doing labs and lectures with us as the ultrasound faculty. If you have not had any ultrasound experience going into residency, we get you up to speed in that very first month. And then everyone has a ultrasound rotation for 1 month during their intern year. And so the good news is, though, that you'll all have opportunities to work with our ultrasound faculty on shift. And even our non-ultrasound faculty, many of them are incredibly facile with the technology. And so there will be ultrasounds on every shift that you work in the emergency department. Chigozie gave you the information about what we're billing for, but we are doing 25 to 50 exams on any given day. So we are an ultrasound powerhouse, I think. Also, I was just going to, for anyone who doesn't already love ultrasound as much as I want you to, I was just going to sort of give you an idea of why I think it's so important. And I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at the ultrasound podcast. That is a good opportunity to get some basic information and then also some very advanced techniques. But I appreciated their slogan, which is ultrasound can make bad doctors decent and good doctors great. And that is exactly what it does. It takes a lot of the indecision and work out of that first 15 minutes of your assessment of a patient who's potentially critically ill. So just to give you a little case, you have a 65-year-old guy who comes in straight from the airport where he got off a flight from South Africa that was 17 hours long, who has a history of CHF and COPD. He has a temperature of 101, systolic pressure of 85. He is breathing about 34 times a minute and is satting 90%. That is should be everyone's sort of most amazing, exciting academic case, but also should be terrifying because the differential is completely broad. And in 5 minutes or less with ultrasound, you can do a limited echo, a chest exam, and an IVC exam, and you can say that the EF is hyperdynamic, the IVC is flat, there are no B lines in the lungs, then that is most likely sepsis from some non-pulmonary cause, or there may be focal B lines with all those other things. That's a pneumonia, and you can begin to treat it. They have an EF that's preserved, but a right ventricle that's dilated, and a McConnell sign, and their lungs are clear, and their IVC is fat and plethoric. They are likely to have a PE from the flight that they just got off of, and you can confirm that with a DVT study if you like. If they have a large pericardial effusion and you're seeing diastolic RV collapse, then that is a fat IVC, then that's concerning for tamponade. And all of these things, the things that you would do to treat them are very different and potentially harmful if you treat the wrong thing the wrong way. So all of that, though, you can get absolute confidence that you're doing the right thing if you know how to handle this machine. That's what you'll hear.
Just to piggyback off what Dr. Miller was saying, especially being like a third year now, that's something that in every critical patient, I'm grabbing the ultrasounds, which intern year I probably would not have been as quick to it. But as I'm seeing more critical patients, like absolutely, like it's just as important as it is to have your airway ready and have your scalpel ready. You want to have your ultrasound nearby because it really is helpful as far as what do you want to pursue next, especially when you're in a time crunch. So.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah, no, the ultrasound prowess of our faculty and residents both is astounding, and I'm constantly playing catch up myself. So truly remarkable education that you get in ultrasound, absolute springboard into fellowship. And if you aren't doing a fellowship, you are well trained, well versed in all of the necessary bedside or POCUS, as we say, point of care ultrasound. So thank you guys for that. And then for our next up, we have our quality assurance, which is absolutely, I think, such a boon for our education in this department, our lifelong learning. So Dr. Waller De La Rosa and I think Dr. Chiozda, if you guys are on the call and want to kind of give us a little bit of oversight for that.
Hey, how's everyone doing? So if you can hear me, I'm John Waller De La Rosa. I just completed quality fellowship here and I'm new faculty, and I'm going to talk with you briefly about our culture of quality here at McGovern. A fundamental fact is that to err is human, right? Everyone makes mistakes. The goal of quality assurance and quality improvement is to study these errors, and learn from them in order to create sort of safer systems of care for our patients. So we need to ultimately be open with ourselves about any opportunities for improvement, identify these cases, discuss what happened, and try to prevent any recurrence. This is something that we pride ourselves on doing, and something that has been a key part of our culture here for years. Sort of to give you some insight into this, we have an anonymous reporting website that's completely internal, where anyone, residents or faculty, can submit any cases they think were interesting, where there is an area of opportunity, just critical care cases. And every month as a group, the whole department, residents and faculty, can all come to this open meeting and break down these cases, go through them, figure out where was there an opportunity for improvement, how could we have done better, is there an underlying system that needs to be fixed, and from this comes a huge number of quality improvement projects that the residents take on with faculty mentorship, faculty sponsorship, and additionally, a lot of this goes into didactics with our monthly quality assurance conference, where we go through the cases, one by one as case examples, have interactive questions, and we all kind of try to learn together from these opportunities so that we can deliver better care to our patients. And then ultimately, this huge number of cases that have been submitted to our reporting website have been stored as a huge QI database, which provides a huge opportunity for quality improvement research, if that's something you're ultimately interested in. And then at the end of every QA conference, we ultimately end with kudos, where we talk about, all the good stuff we've done this month and all the, phenomenal work in times of excellence from faculty and from residents, and the great patient care we've delivered. Yeah, in the comments, it's effectively, the evolution of M&M, the morbidity and mortality conferences. But the goal is to make it non-punitive, and to really approach this, scientifically and openly, and try to, get to the root cause of what happened and how to prevent it from recurring. And so that's sort of my piece. I'll let Will, we have two quality assurance vice chiefs, Dr. DK and Dr. Chiosta, and I'll let Dr. Chiosta take over now.
Yeah, like John quite eloquently said, I'm one of the QA vice chiefs, and like you mentioned, it's not a punitive process, and it's more than just, I would say, more than medical errors. A lot of the cases that are submitted are just interesting cases that can have a learning benefit to everybody. So the cases that are presented aren't necessarily errors. They can be just very interesting, difficult cases that were potentially handled well. And the time that I've spent as QA vice chief has really grown my practice, and I've learned so much from other people, as much as I have from the patients that I've seen. So I can't stress enough how much it is helpful, and those meetings are helpful to everybody. And I think that the other point that John didn't really mention on is in addition to quality assurance, there's also a component of quality improvement. So all these cases that come and are spoken about, and especially things that might be recurrently happening, it's an avenue to develop any sort of improvement in systems improvement pathways or algorithms that can be helpful in the future, and have really helped from I've seen in the 2 years I've been here, a lot of improvements in the hospitals that we do work at LBJ and Herman, and really help strengthen the patient care that we deliver. That's all I kind of have to add. John kind of touched on a lot of it. Yeah. I think you're muted, John.
I am. And yeah, at least having talked with a lot of other faculty from other places, it's something that's a little bit unique to our program, is how much time we spend on this, and how open we ultimately are about it. And so I think it really is a strength of our program.
Yeah, no, I would underscore that. It is, if you struggle with thinking like me, it is a place where you can go to listen to other people think out loud about the cases that you see on a daily basis, find where other very smart people have had a false step, and realize that we can all make those. It is a humbling experience, a rewarding experience. It really, really is a valuable learning tool for all of us. So these guys and so many others are heavily invested in this as a part of our culture. And I will say, with the amount of attention that we pay to this, I've not worked in a place or trained in a place through med school residency. Granted, I've only been here as a faculty, and now as a faculty that has spent as much time and has done it as well as what we do here. So just to underscore, hopefully, what was said. So thank you guys for that. And then the last but certainly not least for tonight, just as far as highlights go, is informatics. And so we've got the good Dr. Hoot, and I think our informatics vice chief is John Newsom. He's on shift right now as well. So I'll do my best impression of him once Dr. Hoot finishes.
So hi everyone, I'm Nathan Hoot. Thank you all for coming. And so I'm representing the informatics portion of our group. I come from a MD PhD background, and so I'm a bit more focused on the research side of informatics, but I'll tell you about the service side as well. So those are roughly the two sides of the coin in terms of opportunities with informatics here at McGovern, is the service and the research. And the service has to do with our ED information systems and making them better to improve quality of life for providers, which includes of you all as residents. We use the two largest EMRs. We use Epic at one site, Cerner at one site, and between the two of those, that constitutes a majority market share. So odds are wherever you work in the future, you will have already trained on one of the computer systems during residency here. Getting involved in the service side of informatics means looking at what is working and what could be done better, and then getting involved with the hospital leadership to look at how to make things better, and it can result in change. In other words, that you can improve order sets, you can improve our documentation methods. We had a major shift in documentation at Herman a few years ago when we switched from T-System to a Cerner product. You can also improve things related to radiology or labs or the whiteboard. We're heavily dependent in the electronic age on our computer systems and delivery of patient care. And the computer could be something that is something that causes you to stumble and slow down on shift. It could be something that makes your shift better. And so our goal is to continually improve it to make it better. So being involved in the service side gives you the opportunity to do that. It's also an opportunity to get involved with hospital leadership, because hospital leadership cares about what heavily involved providers, or aka super users, think about the system, and they very much value your input in terms of how to streamline it and make it better, to make it a tool that makes you more efficient, because all of our interests are aligned for people to be more efficient using our informatics systems. So it is a bit of an opportunity to rub elbows with some people in leadership, because they very much value, they are aware that residents are heavily dependent on using this computer system. And so they do value trainees' input because of that. They recognize that you all are much more familiar with the details and the inner workings of the computer system, and perhaps in some cases than some of your faculty members. So your involvement is viewed as an asset in that way. Your input is very much appreciated. We have a vice chief role in informatics that one of our older residents has been involved in, and one of our younger residents, I'm not sure if Jonathan Newsom was going to make it, is continuing to be involved in. And if that's something that interests you, then you would certainly have that opportunity here. Then the other side of the coin in informatics is the research side, and that's what I'm more involved in. We have I'll try to make it a list of 5 things. I'm working on it. We have the largest school of biomedical informatics in the world. In fact, I believe it's the only standalone school that's dedicated to biomedical informatics in the world, and it's a part of UT Houston. And our ED group has close relationships with them. There's been a lot of research projects with co-authorship between the informatics faculty and the ED faculty, and they value our involvement as clinicians with the perspective that we bring to that. So the research side of informatics, my particular niche is ED crowding, which is a broad topic that affects everyone everywhere in emergency medicine. It's crowding and operational efficiency, the adverse effects of crowding. That's my particular niche. If you ever want to talk deeper about that offline, I'm happy to. But there are many other opportunities in informatics research that largely relate to quality, safety, and efficiency. Because that's how informatics ties closely into medicine. There's opportunities for research in cognitive processing, in other words, the way providers think. There's opportunities for research in terms of sign out communication, and the opportunities where we can improve that. There's been research projects related to visualization techniques. In other words, the thing you see in terms of the whiteboard or other views that we get in the ED is that presenting you the information that you need in a way that's easy to grasp without overloading you with information. These are the types of questions that our colleagues in informatics research are involved in. So if you are interested in either the service side or the research side, you would have the opportunity to get publications there, then this is certainly a place that will give you abundant opportunities for that.
Awesome. Well, Salil's brushing up his magic tricks. That I think one of the things, excuse me, Dr. Hoot, you wrote a textbook on informatics, I believe.
A textbook chapter, yes.
The textbook chapter, amongst other things, with regard to research. I think that is a fairly unique thing within our program. And also Emeka Okafor, who's not on the call, he's one of our adjunct faculty, is within the Memorial Hermann system, I think second or so. He's up in the C-suite within the entire system for informatics. Is that right? I forget his exact title, but
yeah, I think he's the director of acute care informatics for the whole Hermann system. And so he was very, very talented in what he did and got recognized and got promoted well over. So he's still over emergency department informatics, but also over the operating rooms, the the acute care floor units, the ICUs, in terms of their strategic direction and implementation for informatics.
Absolutely. So we still rope him into mentorship, and I think he'll actually join us during the interview season once or twice too. So. Thank you guys for that. And with regard to Dr. Newsom, he's in our surgical ICU rotation right now, so he couldn't make the call. He's on call, but he definitely is actively involved with EMR education within the intern orientation month, which I don't know if we mentioned that on this call. I think it got brought up on the first one, but that is I think one of the things that we do when you come into our program. It's a solid month of sort of getting you to get acclimated again. We recognize you haven't seen or examined or thought about a patient for about 6 months or more. So we bring you back into clinical medicine. We brush off all of the cobwebs and educate and give you some of the core content as well as skill sets. So you go through cadaver labs and central line placement, et cetera, ultrasonography, and we kind of get you to hit the ground running in August. You also get to socialize a ton pre-COVID, and we'll see if we can get back there a bit more. But he taught a number of EMR utilization things to the interns as they arrived in July. And then he's also been involved with some email blast and quick hits for tips and tricks on how to hack your way through EMR more effectively. He's been involved in the meetings that Dr. Hoot mentioned with regard to administration and making decisions. He's advocated for the resident viewpoint, and I think his most recent example of that he gave me for tonight was head CT decision rule that's worked effectively out at LBJ. He's bringing that over and advocating for that at Hermann. And then there's also research opportunities that he's still fleshing out and given the early time of year. But whether that's a website revision or quality improvement project for our website, amongst other things. We've got some amazing people that don't really tie into informatics and are a bit more communications, but there's an overlap there with web design, web interface, and Tom Fadile's working with us on that. And I don't know if he's on the call tonight, but he was last week. So tons of opportunity in each of these different areas that we've highlighted tonight. But I just wanted to open the floor, and I don't know if I'm sure I missed a fair amount of the chat, but wanted to, before Hutch is raising his hand. So Hutch, you take it, you ask away.
I'm sorry, I just speak too much of these. I get too excited. I get all amped up, but I know Donna was about to say the same thing that I am, but speaking from somebody who, again, started as an intern, worked our way up, Donna and I are both, along with also opportunities to have, a chief role now. That month of intern year, I'll be completely honest. When I first got here, I was like, man, I just want to get started. Like let me go. Like, what is this all about? But I cannot tell you how integral that is, meeting and working with Dr. Miller and getting our ultrasound feet wet and learning all the logistics behind all this. And then the idea of 2 different EMRs. These are all really intimidating things from a medical student into a resident role. And I'll be completely honest, by the end of that first month, you are tenacious and you are excited the same as you were on day one. But the difference is that you're prepared, and you're prepared to step into 2 incredibly busy facilities and then not look back and just pick up and go full speed ahead with that training. And it was absolutely instrumental in every success that I have had, and I do not say that lightly.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks, Rich. And I think one of the, if we're spiking any questions into your head, please interrupt, because we'll talk your heads off until 8 o'clock if you don't. But I think one of the things that was touted for me with regard to faculty recruitment when I joined the faculty here was the acuity. And I think a lot of places will talk about acuity, and this was no different. And I think sometimes I get a little bit complacent is the wrong word, but I think I wonder if us talking about our acuity is legitimate the way we do. And every time we get a new faculty member who comes in, that's oftentimes the first thing they say within a week or a month is, "You guys weren't joking. This is totally different from the place I worked or anywhere I've worked before." It's a super high acuity. That is largely, I think, an artificial construct of working in the medical center, and also it's somewhat inorganic construct working at LBJ in critical care in particular. There's a distillate of acuity at both sites because of the sort of geographic, and they're very different, but geographic isolation of both of those, being in the world's largest medical center, but it's not necessarily a drive-through place. It is you come by ambulance or by helicopter for the most part in getting to us there. And then at LBJ, it is basically the only hospital in that entire quadrant of Houston. And so that also happens to be the poorest zip code in Houston. And that is something that very much informs the patient population that we see out there. Different again from what we see at Herman, but also there's a distillate of acuity in the critical care suite that we work at there that is super high, and then about national average for the rest of the patient population out there.
Dr. Van Meter, there's some great questions in the chat.
Yes, what else do we have? Throw them out there.
Yes, so we have a question about opportunities in event medicine, which Dr. Schultz has kind of been sharing on the chat, but if you want to address everyone to talk about those opportunities.
Sure. We have through the department is contract as Ironman races, half and a full Ironman race, which happen in the spring every year. This year, actually, there were 3 because of COVID. And so that's one opportunity where the residents, we tend to bring several residents to each of those. It's EM faculty who are kind of running the show on those. But we've had, part of it is being in one of, the 3rd largest city in the country is stuff comes up. And when stuff comes up, people look at UT to help with it. And a great example is we had residents inside the stadium for Super Bowl 51 here in Houston. We had residents for the entire week leading up to the Super Bowl at all the events going on ahead of time. So there's lots of opportunities for years to get involved in some various event medicine stuff. And if you're specifically interested in it, there's even more opportunities if you get involved with the EMS pre-hospital section with Dr. Ferguson, et cetera, EMS vice chief, disaster vice chiefs. There's other opportunities that'll come up as well.
A couple more questions. One was about if we have opportunities for certifications in ultrasound. Dr. Miller or anyone else from the ultrasound team want to touch on that?
I don't know if
So there are opportunities. There's something called the RDMS, which is essentially the licensing that a sonographer goes through. It has with it some attached imaging requirements. Believe at this point it may be 800 exams. It was 600. I think they increased it. And so I am RDMS certified, so I can act as a sponsor for that. And if you can log that many exams, I write you a letter and you take the exam, if that's something you're interested in. There is a raging debate in the world of emergency medicine, though, about whether or not we should take that exam, because we are not sonographers. We are practitioners and physicians who are fully capable of, just by nature of our training, be qualified to perform these studies. But if you do co-practice in a rural environment or someplace that is outside of a major city, that does give you the language. It's an accreditation that they recognize in the hospital, and so lends some credibility if credibility is a problem. Hopefully, by the time you all finish residency, that will not be a problem at all. And if you're coming out of an emergency medicine residency program that is mandatorily required to have major ultrasound competency, then that shouldn't be a question when you go work somewhere else. But you want to pursue a leadership role and you don't want to go the fellowship route, that may be a way to get yourself into some sort of an ultrasound director position at a community place.
Awesome. I'm gonna jump in really quick because I saw a question about the PEM experience and sick kids. And so I just want to direct that back to some of our PEM faculty, either Dr. Kosoko or I think Dr. Fairbrother split their time 50-50. And forgive me if I'm missing anybody else. And I'm just going to preempt that with, it's amazing here. So take it away.
Sure. Okay. So we have a children's hospital that's integrated. It's actually a part of our main hospital at Memorial Hermann. So that's one of your pediatric experiences. So anytime you have something labeled EM month, we actually integrate pediatric shifts into that month. So sometimes it'll be in an adult shift, sometimes it'll be on a pediatric shift. And that goes throughout your whole time here. So you get pediatric experiences every time you're on an EM month. In addition, you have LBJ is a general hospital, so it works almost like it's a county hospital, general hospital. So the emergency department is not divided into peds or adults. So if any pediatric patients go in there, you can see pediatric patients there. In addition, your second year, you have 1 month at Texas Children's Hospital. Both we and I believe Baylor do 1 month of pediatrics over there at Texas Children to get a different sense of Texas Children being the third largest pediatric hospital in the country. So you can see sometimes a bit higher pathologies, more chronic kids. But in general, I think this is some of the most pediatric experience that I have seen for many 3-year emergency medicine programs. And yeah, I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything about peds. You should be scared of sick kids. Yeah, they're scary. I'm a PEM, and I'm still scared of sick kids.
We had a question about how we split our time between academic and community hospitals. So like we were saying a little bit earlier, we split our time between LBJ, which is our more of our county experience, and then Hermann, which is more of the academic type center. And then on top of that, we also have several months now. We do 1 second year at a community shop. We do 2 third year at a community shop, with the opportunity to do a third one if you wanted to as an elective. So tons of diverse experience during our training.
Wonderful, awesome. Hopefully that answered the question with regard to the PEM and then also community practice. If you need more clarification, let us know. What else? Any other questions that came up in the chat that I haven't caught? Anybody that
Jacqueline,
wants to?
Jacqueline asked a great question. She said, how are procedures and are interns typically getting nearly signed off by the end of their intern year? I could talk about procedures all day long in our facility. We have really great opportunities. There's definitely procedures that are, a little bit harder to come by and sometimes take all 3 years to get crikes and occasionally chest tubes and whatnot. But typically, especially for things like intubations and central lines and art lines and paras and lumbar punctures, all these things, you're going to be flying through these procedures at both facilities. One of the neatest things I found about this program was related to procedures in that other than level 1 traumas, there is no procedure that is withheld from an intern. So if you step in day 1 after your orientation month and you have the sickest of sick medical patient, that is your patient, and you're going to have first dibs at just about all those procedures. And if you're not ready for that and you're not comfortable with that idea, you have an upper level who is standing right behind you to not take the procedure, but walk you through it. And if that's not the case, you have an attending who is always standing right there to do the same.
And just to piggyback on that, we have a very collegiate relationship with our trauma service. We rotate with them on multiple different services, including a trauma service, trauma rotation that's 2 weeks, and our sticky rotation that's a full month. So we get very well acclimated with our trauma colleagues. So they get to know you, you get to know them. And there's so many procedures, honestly, like on any given night, you'll have north of 15 level 1s, and, everyone gets their numbers. As an intern, you get your chest tubes, you get your Central and Art line. So there is definitely enough to go around. So we have a great relationship with trauma and our other services as well.
And just to piggyback also on that too, like just as an example, one of our interns, I mean, we've been now, for 2 months in now, one of our interns just did a transvenous pacer not too long ago, which at many other institutions you may not even do. Let's say during your residency, may just not happen. And one of our interns is here doing it, and one of our seniors is kind of taking them through it. So like Hutch is saying, no procedure is taken away from you ever. In terms of that stuff, we allow you to do everything, and you always have help with that. And it's really important to understand that, because not all places are like that. And I think that makes us very, very special, and what I love about our program.
The thing is the acuity of trauma both at LBJ and at Herman. I mean, the level 2s at at Herman that are pretty much exclusively emergency medicine run would be level 1s where I train, certainly, and a lot of other places. They're really sick. And then LBJ being kind of a hospital style it's a level 3 trauma center, but it's also kind of in an area where you get drop-off traumas, people pulling up and dropping off trauma patients. So you get level 1 trauma even at the level 3 because of the location and kind of what's going on kind of in those areas. So, and a lot of times that's where you can get some opening there. So there's lots of opportunities, even on the sickest trauma, to get that experience at both shops.
Yeah, and to address, let's see, I saw a great question in there from, now it's getting kicked up the list, so sorry, but there's a question about, do you feel like you're struggling to get procedures in between you and surgery? I think Dr. Schultz just kind of addressed that. And also you addressed that with regard to numbers. Just the way that it works is that on a level 1, obviously both services are activated simultaneously. You're ready, ideally ready at the bedside. If there are two chest tubes, it goes kind of usually splits just the uprights, 1 EM, 1 surgery. And if there's 1 chest tube, it is a negotiation between services and attendings and residents. So I think that what we found is, as long as we are ready and advocating, it's a shared experience, and there's it's not an animosity laden situation whatsoever. Very collegial working environment with our trauma surgeons. They're an amazing asset for our training as well. They're brilliant. They are just gifted with regard to trauma. Some of the things that happen with our systems and our structure surrounding that are almost supernatural with regard to what happens at Herman. So if that answers your question, then obviously Dr. Schultz, I think, said it, but our level 2s are they more than double, I think, the number of level 1 activations. And so hidden within those level 2s, and it's not so hidden, our level 2s are super sick, and most other places, a good percentage of those, and by that I'm making a number up, but it's significant. I'd say a third or more of them would be level 1 easily at most other institutions. And so those are your patients, and you manage those patients and then consult appropriately. So yeah, I think if that answers the question, forgive me because I lost it somewhere up in there, but bring it back if we haven't answered any of these sufficiently. We want to make sure that that's what this calls for.
I just want to add one thing on the trauma note, because I know that that's always a real high point for folks. The way that our program is set up as an intern, you become a master with the ultrasound when it comes to trauma. So you are handling typically every single level 1 fast is on you. And that's a really big deal, because what happens is second year, that's kind of your real major trauma foundation in our program. So you spend 2 weeks of nights with the trauma service doing in-ER trauma operations. So you're doing all those chest tubes. You're helping and facilitating with thoracotomies, which we do on a very regular basis. You're doing all those crash art lines, et cetera, but you're also spending a month during your second year doing a STICU rotation, which with zero qualms, it's a very difficult rotation, but it's those 2 months worth of rotations that give you a relationship with the trauma service. So for the rest of your residency program, you are intertwined with them. And so when all of a sudden there's 3 level 1s, that right there exceeds the capabilities of having an individual trauma person on each one. So that all of a sudden fluxes you into the role of handling the chest tubes, et cetera. You get very familiar with all those trauma faculty. That's a really big deal as well.
And I'm just gonna also I want to put this in context too, because we're spending a lot of time talking about trauma, and I think that's one of the first things that usually gets thrown out there about us. But it's not a one-trick pony. I think the acuity spreads through all of emergency medicine presentations with regard to stroke, STEMI, sepsis. I've seen more neck fash, more Ludwig's angina, more septic patients, neutropenic patients, you name it. We are a peritonsillar center of abscess drainage center of excellence. We get a ton of things referred in from community settings that really allow you to, I think, flex to a skill set that is really going to serve you well regardless of where you practice post-residency, whether it's academics, whether it's private practice, fellowship. It's I think pretty remarkable. It's challenging, no doubt, but it is a fun place to work. Yeah, neck fash center of excellence. Yes, it's end stage everything center of excellence. End stage renal, end stage diabetes, end stage heart failure, end stage everything.
Yeah, I hope everyone's learned a lot from these sessions that we've had. I just want to put a quick plug in, a little something less educational, just the city of Houston itself. This is the 4th largest city in the country. It's a city, it's something that for me personally, like when I was looking for a place for residency, I wanted to be in a big city, but to avoid the cost of being in a New York or LA or Chicago. And Houston is exactly that. I'm in a huge city, a super diverse city, a large Vietnamese population, a large Hispanic population, a large African-American population. And that's the patients we treat. And that's one thing that I love so much about this program is that we treat such a diverse population here in Houston. And the city itself has everything to offer, from sports, an incredible food scene. Last month, August, was, we call it Restaurant Week, even though it's actually a month. Houston's it's such a great city, man. Like, I love it. I'm from Atlanta originally. I want a bigger city. You get paid very well as a resident here, relatively. It's a great deal, honestly.
So I thought there was a really good on the chat about kind of what makes us stand out compared to other programs in Houston, other programs in the country. Before I throw that out to all the amazing people on the call to answer that question, for me, it's the diversity of experience. Going between LBJ and Herman, you get such a wide spectrum, both in patient population, in presentation and acuity, that I think when you come out the other end, you're so well-rounded that you have all the tools you need to be a good clinician. But we have such amazing faculty and other residents on here. I want to see what they think as well.
No, I think what I would say about that is they're an amazing program, and what I would say is you have to look at both of us if you're interested in Houston. They do a lot of really great things. They're also a busy trauma center, and they have a wonderful patient population, very similar to what we see at LBJ. And I think ultimately you guys need to decide, where your fit is, and it's got to be a gut check that kind of goes with all of the tangible and intangible things that inform that decision. So asking good questions like that one, and asking as many as you can. And I think our collective struggle, yours and ours, is to really get to know you and have you get to know us in a meaningful way so that you can make that informed choice. But yeah, no, I think they do some fantastic work across the street, and you would not be you'd be very well served by going there.
Yeah, I would echo what Dr. Van Meter just said. I mean, it is a program, and they have some different strengths and some things. You know, somebody commented, there's certainly a higher EMS volume into the Memorial Hermann side than the other level 1 trauma center or the other level 2 trauma centers in the city, largely because we have a helipad and there's not one over there. Stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a great experience there. They've got some really great opportunities in EMS. They've got opportunities in research. They've done some really cool stuff over there. So it's really about kind of, pairing your strengths and what you're looking for with the various programs. So I'm sure they'll be happy to talk about it as well. We just kind of want to highlight where we think we have kind of the strongest part.
And if you end up at another program in Houston, it won't be the last that you see of us. We collaborate on conferences. Our ultrasound division meet for journal clubs. We have a very collegiate relationship with them, and we share a hospital system. So LBJ and Bentab are Harris Health. So there are lots of policies and procedures and things that have to be in agreement between the two hospitals. So we're in pretty constant interaction with the folks across the street. And I think one of the things that is extra challenging this year, that I'm sure you're up to the challenge, is that usually I would say the best way for you to decide what your gut reaction is to go and spend a day after an interview to hang out in the emergency department. Don't see us on our best day when we're, putting all of our best faces forward. See us on a regular day. And if on a regular day you see that we represented ourselves truly, that is incredibly telling for any of these programs. And so you're going to have to do a lot of due diligence in this new format to really ask questions, get personal contacts at all the programs. Don't just have that be the social chair, whoever that you're talking to. You want a couple of people per class that you can kind of bounce some ideas off of to get that feel, because you will find where you fit.
One other thing I just want to throw out there, kind of similar lines, and I will preface this with, I didn't train here. I came to Houston 8 years ago for fellowship and stayed. Several people on this call have trained here, faculty-wise. One thing to really point out, because it came up in the last call, it didn't come up on this call that I saw in the chat. It's a big class. It's 20 per class. It's 60 residents. Residents are closer with each other. They're closer with their faculty than I was in a program that had 21 people in the entire program. It's really close. The families do it. There's a lot of focus on wellness. There's a lot of focus on, journal club is an event people want to go to. It's not just an academic thing. It's those kind of things are really important, I think, from as a faculty looking in, right, and not as a resident. But I have a great relationship with the residents. It really is a very collegial environment. I think is worth pointing out, because I know it came up last time in terms of it's a big program. It is a big program. It's a big program that does a lot of things together. I know they talked about some of the community outreach stuff, but I just want to throw that out there because it came up last time, and I think it was important to bring up again, because some people see that and kind of shy away. I don't think it's a reason, if you're worried about that, to be worried.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I think go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna kind of go along that line. I moved from Arizona, and so I don't have any family in Houston. So if anybody's worried about that, it's doable. It's hard, but it's doable. The amount of residents we have the amounts of residents we have was actually a plus for me. I think that having 20 residents offers so much more personality in the class. There's so many different people in my class from all walks of life that I would never have met otherwise. And orientation month, we basically became a family. And so, as Dr. Schultz says, our residency is extremely close. There is not a single thing that, I wouldn't ask for a favor for any of my classmates here, and even, third years and interns. So I appreciate that family feeling. The other thing is I was one of those people who was super paranoid, and I interviewed a lot, pretty much bankrupt myself flying across the country. But it's all started to kind of mash together. It sort of feels the same, every program kind of tells you this is what makes them. So at some point it had to become sort of, yes, the Nigerian jollof, there's jollof here. It had to become sort of like that gut feeling of where do I fit in? And I think for me, it's sort of talking to the residents and seeing myself in the residents. You kind of have to, it's a little hard with COVID now, but before, when you would talk to them or if you see them in shift, you're like, this is the type of doctor I want to be. Like, look at the things that our faculty are doing, the jobs our residents are getting. That to me was something that I wanted to be a part of and eventually come out that way. And I didn't make a mistake because it turns out it's awesome. And I love the relationship we have with our faculty. I know this is something we didn't really have in my home program. It's sort of, I can identify different parts of myself with different faculty members. And that helps so much more because we have, a lot in common with each of the faculty members and something they bring to my education. And they're so giving of themselves inside the job, outside the job. I really love this program and I don't regret a single choice that I made. Tons of things to do here. Most importantly, the Nigerian jollof. Come for the jollof.
Hey, real quick, Stephanie Yee had mentioned work-life balance. A lot of people are kind of touching on this, and I know that my particular case is not going to be the same for everybody, but as an intern, my wife and I got pregnant. We were very excited about that. It was a really difficult time, and now having, again, been on the other side and being a chief and seeing what this program does to do everything that they can to be supportive for their residents from a work-life balance type perspective. Life happens, things happen, stuff comes up. And as somebody mentioned, when you have 20 residents in a class, there is some maneuverability, but none of that matters if you don't have a program that is behind the scenes busting their butt to do things. So I can personally attest, I have a beautiful 15-month-old little boy who just went to sleep. Otherwise, I would absolutely put him on the camera, but we have a great work-life balance.
Yeah, and if I could just chime in with the less exciting side of that work-life balance, and Hutch kind of alluded to it, I think we do a lot of behind-the-scenes work focusing on our structure. There he is, Charles. That's a good shot. We do a lot of behind-the-scenes work focusing on protocol, systems, procedures, how we interface with you as a resident in the program, and we try to cut out the stuff that doesn't have an impact on your growth, your development, your wellness. And we do our best to sort of bob and weave through life with you. And so that's something that it takes a lot of time, but I think time well invested, and something that we have a fixation on within the program for sure. Drew's getting the rough end of things on the chat.
I think one thing I wanted to say is I remember going through the residency process, which I won't tell you what year that was. Really just go where you'll be happy. And I know that's hard, especially hard now during COVID where we're all on a WebEx. But I mean, you will get great training wherever you go. You'll be a great emergency physician wherever you go. You'll see as many traumas and do procedures wherever you go, but just look at the people who are there and just watch their interactions and watch how they talk to each other and just look and see, even if the place is burning down on a trauma Saturday night, we're all still in it together in a family. So just see how people interact with each other and if they're really happy, because that's honestly being happy and just keeping a positive attitude through residency is big. And, but you'll do great wherever you go. But you should come here because we're all great.
You guys definitely should come here. Like Dr. Ferguson said, we really are a family. We all look different. We all embrace our differences. We talk about the uncomfortable topics. And again, I think we talked about this in the first session, but just the diversity of who we are, where we come from all over the country, ethnically, sexual orientation. We have it all covered throughout the 60 of us and our incredibly diverse faculty. You know, we represent the city of Houston. We are able to adequately treat our patients and address, you know, specific cultural concerns. And I think that's really important in a program. So wherever you guys look, you know, make sure it's a program that is able to address the, you know, the inequities in the city that you're treating.
And I mean, you mentioned something also about having the difficult conversations. I think I'm going to throw back and give a shout out to our QA culture as sort of laying the groundwork over the last decade and a half for our residency and our faculty. I think there are uncomfortable conversations had on a regular basis in a respectful, constructive, supportive way out of that, and that's lended it our overall culture. I think we're a culture that thrives on transparency and truth, and seeks that out in every interaction, and that goes with cultural competency, implicit bias, as much as it does go with the medical knowledge that you have or don't have, and how do we figure out that world together and navigate that together. So thank you for that comment. What else? Any other questions? Do we pique an interest, or something that we need to elaborate on?
One of the things that I like to bring up, Dr. Van Meter never mentions this, but I remember from my interview, just a side note, if you interview with Dr. Van Meter, expect that you're going to run over on time. It just happens. But I can still remember from our interview when I was in y'all's shoes, and I asked him what he looks for in the perfect candidate. What is his perfect candidate? And he actually stopped and thought about it genuinely for a second. And he said, we want the most passionate people that we can teach to become incredible ER doctors. And I think that there are a million people on this call right now, residents and faculty, program directors, associate program directors, that are willing to give evidence for that. None of us are required to be here. This is a volunteer thing. We were not told we have to do this. But I'll tell you what, it is these people and this program director and this staff and group of people who, when I look at the other third-year residents sitting next to me, I'm like, it's been 3 years and we're about to leave this place. And no, we're not ready yet. We all have a long way to go. But the amount of growth that we've all grown is tremendous, and it's humbling to see from this side. So,
Awesome. Well, we are getting a little bit past 8 o'clock, just scotch. So I think I might put a pin in it if that's okay with folks. But that said, if we want to just leave I'll leave it open for another minute. And if anybody wants to share an email that you can email the residency. You can find that on our departmental website if you have questions. The chiefs are all 4 of them listed on the departmental website as well. So you can also reach out to them directly. You can follow us on social media if you're interested. In Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And we also, we forgot to mention this last week, but we determined we can't open our quality assurance conference, which is a shame, but we talk about sensitive information there. So we can't put that out in the wide world. But our other conference time is open to you if you're interested. Just email the residency email, and we can get you set up with the WebEx link for that if you want to try out one of our Thursday conferences. The only other one that we might actually be able to get you into our oral boards small group conference, but we do simulation and oral boards on second Thursdays each month. And we're still that's our in-person time that we're able to glom onto. The rest of it's virtual. So if you are interested, by no means, do this if the slate is full, but please do if you find that it would be helpful. Oso, are you raising your hand? No? Okay.
I was just practicing my GQ pose. That's all. Sorry.
No.
You don't need to practice it. You've mastered it.
Yes. Best dressed every year. All right. So with that said, thank you guys for making time for us tonight. We really appreciate your time, and don't be a stranger if you have questions. We'll hope to see you on the interview trail, and wish you all the best as you kind of move through this new world with us. All right. All right. Good night.